Ladies and gentlemen and elected members, Angus Council will now commence.
I would like to welcome members to the first hybrid meeting of Angus Council and remind all attendees that this meeting is being recorded and webcast live on the Council's YouTube channel. Could I remind all remote attendees to mute their microphones when not speaking, and please raise your electronic hand should you wish to speak. Please do not speak during items unless I invite you to speak. For members present, please raise your hand if you wish to speak. The committee officer will now take a roll call of those members present.
Provost.
Here, present.
Deputy Provost.
I'm here.
Councillor Beattie.
Here.
Councillor Bell.
Here.
Councillor Brace.
Present.
Councillor Cheek.
Present.
Councillor Pound. Here. Councillor Doran.
Present.
Present. Councillor Duff.
Present.
Councillor Durno.
Present.
Councillor Gall.
Present.
Sorry, could we go back to Councillor Fotheringham again?
Yes, Mrs. Anderson, the volume was muted. I don't know what went wrong, but the last 3 or 4 people I didn't hear, but I'm here.
Thank you. Councillor Gregg. Councillor MacDonald.
Present.
Councillor McLaren.
Present.
Councillor Meakin.
Present.
Councillor Shepherd. Sorry. No, it's that one. Sorry, I'll come back to Councillor Shepherd. Councillor Speed. Here. Councillor Wan. Here. Councillor Whiteside. Could you go back to Councillor Shepherd? Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. I had a wee bit of an issue, but I can hear you now. Present.
Thank you. That's fine. Provost.
Thank you, and therefore that will lead on to apologies for absence.
Yes, Provost. There's apologies from absence from Councillor David Fairweather, Councillor Ronnie Proctor and Councillor Tommy Stewart.
Thank you. Do we have any declarations of interest or statements of transparency? No, fine, thank you. Number 3, minutes of council meetings. 1, minutes of council meetings. Is that minute approved? Agreed. And number 2, that's minutes B to I for noting. Is that noted? Noted. Adult Protection Committee Biennial Report 2020-22. Mrs. Williamson is to introduce. And I think Mr. Ewan West will be invited to speak, but I think that's by your good self. Thank you, Mrs. Williamson.
Thank you, Provost. Yeah, I'm happy to call Ewan West to speak to his report about the Adult Protection Committee biannual report.
Could I ask Mr. West, please, to put his camera on and unmute himself to speak? Mr. West has come in remotely.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Ewan, do you want to introduce the report, the biannual report?
Yes, Margot, sorry, there seems to be a bit of a delay on the system coming to me, but absolutely happy to do so. It's a fairly lengthy report, as members will see, and it covers the period from 2020 to 2022. I'll perhaps just pick out some highlights, and happy to take any questions on in any part of the report. So I think the first page I would point out to members is the number of referrals, which is on page 43. And you can see that from March 2020 through to March, we've had quite a significant increase in the number of referrals, particularly in the period 20 to 2021, when we peaked at a number of 728. It fell back slightly in the following 12 months to 681, but that compared to the periods of 2018 to 2019 and 19 to 20 is quite a significant, in fact, a very significant increase in the number of referrals, which I think can be attributed to a number of different factors. I think COVID and all its consequences in terms of impact on mental health, etc., have probably had a contributory factor to that. I'd like to think that the engagement we have with the public and to make as many people aware of what can be done in terms of adult support protection to protect vulnerable adults has been successful, and that people now have a better knowledge as to how they can make referrals or engage with services who will make referrals on their behalf. So I think that's also been a contributory. And you'll also see from Scottish Fire and Rescue that over those 2 years of this report, the numbers of referrals we've had from that service has increased dramatically. And that's down to themselves doing their own fire home safety visits, and a lot of the referrals are in relation to self-neglect and hoarding that they are finding when they're doing these visits. So it's great that we have those number of referrals coming through. So I think that's one point I would want to highlight in terms of numbers, which obviously has a pretty significant impact then on the amount of work and engagement we have with vulnerable adults and the work that has to be then undertaken by professionals. The other charts that follow are fairly self-explanatory, but if anyone has a question, we're happy to go into those specifically. Running alongside some of this work was our inspection, our national inspection that we've had, which was led by the Care Inspectorate. And what's identified in this report very much is mirrored in the final report that we've had from the inspection team, which was very, very positive about adult protection in Angus. One of the key things that we've had to do over these 2 years is highlighted on page 57, which is learning from initial and significant case reviews. And it's clearly important that in all cases, but particularly cases when there's been one or two challenges presented, that we do learning reviews. And we had to undertake quite a significant learning review in relation to adult P19, and some detail is provided there. Now, out of that review, 59 recommendations were made, which we are very much working through now to ensure that practice going forward picks up on the learning from that review, and indeed other reviews that we've done over the 2-year period. It's really important that we pick up on the issues where we need to focus as priorities going forward, whether that's training, support to staff, increasing knowledge on legislation, etc., etc. So that's been a very significant part of our work going forward. Now, you'll also see when you look at the statistics that moving on to page 59, that the financial harm and scams, as we probably all know it better, are a continuing theme impacting on not just vulnerable adults, but those who are particularly vulnerable. And our Financial Harm Subcommittee of the Adult Protection Committee do a really great job working with partners, police, and a number of other partners, banks, post offices, etc., to try and prevent people being defrauded. Now, a lot of the time, this early intervention, and I think we're almost unique in Angus in Scotland, that we have this early intervention to support vulnerable adults to prevent these frauds being followed through. Now, unfortunately, from time to time, people are defrauded, but we are doing as much work as we can to provide preventative messages out to the public. And we've now started doing our road shows again, where we go to various places to provide information to the public, which is enormously popular. But we had to hold off on that over the COVID period. But we need to get and continue trying to promote messages around prevention, around this scamming. So again, that takes up and has taken up a significant part of our work going forward and over these areas. We've identified a number of areas for development, which is on page 63, that we feel we need to prioritise. And again, these are pretty much mirrored with the findings of the national inspection. And we use these areas that we've identified to help shape our plans going forward. In fact, our strategic plan is due for renewal at the end of this coming year. So we'll use some of the findings from this report to improve, to develop our strategic plan going forward. There are parts in the report from all the relevant services who contribute to the work of adult support and protection in Angus. But I would like to point out on page 68 of the report, where it covers training, learning and development. I think we've made absolutely massive strides in how we deliver training across Angus and the extent of training and learning opportunities that are now made available to all staff and the third sector. It was an area that 2 or 3 years ago we felt we needed to develop further, and the subgroup of the committee have really done a terrific job in providing all these opportunities and doing so in a way through COVID that people could still link into, and subsequently either doing it remotely or hybrid or now back to in-person learning. And again, that was commented upon very positively during our recent inspection, national inspection. One of the areas where we still need to do some more work, and again it was hindered during COVID, was our work in terms of advocacy and supporting service users, which clearly is very important. It's important to hear the feedback from service users on how they found the adult support and protection process, if they've been through that. We have done some work with service users previously, but we didn't get too many coming forward to be part of that. And Angus Independent Advocacy, on behalf of the committee are now undertaking a particularly specific piece of work to move that forward. And I hope to report on progress by the time we do another one of these reports. So, yeah, looking forward, service user involvement, participation on page 74. Our continuous improvement and self-evaluation work must continue and will continue. And one area that, again, causes a bit of a challenge is those individuals, those vulnerable individuals who are transitioning perhaps from childcare services or child support services to adult support services. And some of the individuals involved have some really complex situations. And so we have, as a committee, had a close look at this and developing a much better and improved strategy for people who are transitioning through the services going forward, which hopefully will be a bit more. We'll have. So, Chair, that's a fairly quick summary of the report. It's a fairly lengthy one, as you can see, but happy to take any questions going forward.
Thank you, Mr. West. Do we have any questions? Seeing Councillor Bell first. Councillor Meekin. Any further questions? Therefore, Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Provost. Thank you for the report, Ewan. I just wanted to look at page 43 and the referrals, and I actually found it really interesting, and it really demonstrates the preventative work that a lot of our frontline services do, looking after people in our communities. I was also very interested to see the Mental Welfare Commission statistic on the bottom row of that table, that there have been no referrals. I guess I kind of see that as a positive, because it tends to mean, I think, that our services are working with people to prevent things escalating to requiring Mental Welfare Commission input. I just wonder, does the Mental Welfare Commission work proactively in Angus, or do they tend to be only when there's an issue? Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Sorry. Thank you, Councillor. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry, as I say, there's a bit of delay. Right, that's quite an interesting question, actually, Councillor, because we actually invited the one of the lead management team from the Mental Welfare Commission to come to our Adult Protection Committee yesterday morning to give us a presentation on their role and how they felt they could perhaps be more involved in the work of adult support and protection in Angus. It was a very positive discussion. And the lady who gave that presentation is now going to be our link officer going forward. So I think we can develop a pretty positive relationship further with the Mental Welfare Commission. I do take comfort, as you say, from the fact that we haven't had any referrals from them, which would indicate that nothing has got to that level or their level that should have been dealt with locally. So I do take some comfort in that, but I think it is also likewise very important to maintain strong links with the Commission, who can and do also provide advice to various agencies, which is absolutely great and can help resolve some issues at an early stage. So yeah, it's one to be the relationship, if you like, to be developed as we go forward, but they didn't have any issues to raise with us yesterday, which was also good news, but also welcome the opportunity to present at our committee yesterday.
Thank you, Provost, and thank you, Ewan. You won't have to move far, Ewan, because mine's on the same table, my question. I actually have two, but they're both related to the data. It appears that in 1 year, under the category Other, we had 39 referrals from trading standards, and in the following year, none. Do you have any insight to why that might be?
What I can do, I'll give you my initial answer, Councillor, but I can do a wee bit more digging for you and come back to you. I would think the 39 would include quite a number of referrals in relation to financial harm, which would link in with, I think, an increase in the number of potential scams, for want of a better phrase, that were ongoing during that period. In relation to the zero figure, the following year, it is a good question. I'm not sure the specific answer to it, but I can go away and find out. But I would think the financial harm aspect would be a reason for the fairly high figure in 1 year.
Thank you for that. I look forward to getting that information from you in the future. The next one is on page 47, figure 2. It appears to report that the number of initial case conferences in 2021 in the bar chart was 89. However, if we move to the next page under case conferences and adults at risk in Angus, the number of initial case conferences has continued in an upward trend over the last 5 years, with 114 taking place in 2021. So we have 114 in the text and in the actual chart, it's 89. Am I missing something there?
If you just give me a minute to just have a look at that. Yeah, I think that's something I probably just have to go away and dig into the detail of that one, Councillor. I just need to make sure that the timescales are the same. But again, not want to prevaricate, but I just don't have a specific answer to that one just now, other than to say that in terms of the trend has increased, as you intimate, and that would link into the overall number of referrals received, as I alluded to earlier on. So it's not a surprise that the figures are going up, but that specific point that you mentioned, I need to go and have a look at that, Councillor, and I'll come back to you on both points.
Okay, thank you very much.
Right, I'll say that again. Is there any further questions for Mr. West, including our colleagues on Teams? If not, I will move on to comments. Does anyone up, Councillor Whiteside? Right, Councillor Whiteside.
Thank you, Provost. I duly welcome this report and thank Mr. West for the important report, and it's good to see the positive findings following inspection and also the progress on recommendations following the serious case review. I just thought it was also worth pointing out for clarity that the report has been seen by the Scrutiny and Audit Committee, where they had an opportunity to question it in more detail as well. So thank you.
Right, with no further comments, it is recommended that the Council notes the contents of the Angus Adult Protection Committee Biennial Report 2020 to 2022 appended in this report. Is this agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. Moving on to Treasury Management Strategy Statement 2023, and Mr. Ian Lorimer is going to introduce. But before as he's coming up to the stage, I'm in musical mode this week. Members will note this report will also be considered by Scrutiny and Audit Committee on the 25th of April 2023. Back over to Mr. Lorimer.
Thank you, Provost. Members, great to be back in the chamber. I suppose I would have to reluctantly concede that Treasury Management's not one of those subjects that probably gets pulses racing, but it is still a very critical part of the Council's operations. It is one of the more technical areas of activity of the finance team, But despite all the jargon, it's really about four things mainly. It's about managing our cash flow, so we've got enough money to pay our staff and our suppliers and so on. Borrowing the funds that we need for the capital projects that Council has approved, and to generate income from investment of surplus cash if we have that in our bank account. And management of risk is the fourth aspect of that, managing the risks around all of those activities. Now, the report today is pretty lengthy. We do say in that report, it's really the first 11 pages of the appendix that are the main bits of it. It does contain a lot of technical detail. That's to comply with various statutory codes, etc., etc. But really what it's setting out is our strategy for borrowing and investment for next financial year. It's one of those things that, although the Scrutiny and Audit Committee, as the Provost says, will look at this report, approval of the strategy, and that includes an annual investment strategy, it can be delegated to another committee. It does have to come to full council. So as in past years, really, the strategy for next year centres around what we think will happen with interest rates. That's quite interesting to project ahead. And what we think will happen with interest rates really guides what we'll do in terms of the timing of our borrowing and the decisions that we'll make around investment of any surplus cash. Now, what we're seeing in the strategy, because it is so difficult to project ahead as to what may happen, we're looking to be flexible, and really what we're asking members to agree through the strategy is to set the parameters within which the Treasury activities will be taken forward. If I look at borrowing, first of all, Table 1, which is on page 83 of the papers, that sets out our current Council's debt position and the projected future borrowing. That's based on the decisions that Council made a couple of weeks ago when setting the revenue and capital budgets. You'll see from that Table 1 that we've got a significant amount of, we're projecting we'll have a significant amount of borrowing to do next year and the 2 following years. That's really largely driven by the cost of replacing the Moneyfeith High School. That's our single largest capital project in value that we've ever undertaken. So that's a significant influence there. That table also shows this thing called the capital financing requirement, which is our underlying need to borrow for capital purposes. Now, what we're going to do there is, because we think interest rates will fall over the next 2 to 3 years, we're going to defer much of our new borrowing that we need to do until those rates are more favourable, and we've got the surplus cash balances to allow us to do that. Page 84, Table 2, outlines our projections for interest rates, and really everything that we're suggesting in the strategy is guided around that. And we'll, if we do need to take borrowing, we'll try and time that as best we can based on what's happening with the rates. The investment part of this is the thing that takes so much of the time. So investing money to make a return is important to the Council financially, but we need to do that on a basis that manages the risks. We do that by having clear policies in terms of which what we call counterparties, who we'll place our money with. We have a diversified investment portfolio, so we don't have all our money in one place, etc., etc. And we'll also only invest for certain periods, depending on the credit worthiness of different counterparties. So all of that is important. And just to give a sense of what it means financially for the organisation, we're targeting an investment return for next year of 3.5%. We think that will yield income of 2.725 million, so just under £3 million. To give you a sense of what that means, that's about another 4.3% increase in council tax if we didn't have that income. And I'm not saying that's what would have happened, but it is a significant part of our financials. So similar strategy to last year, flexible approach to borrowing when we need. We'll be guided by interest rates, and we'll try and do our best to make a return on surplus cash without exposing that cash to too much risk. Thank you, Provost. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yes, and before we do go on to questions, we have lost connection with Councillor Fotheringham. Do we agree to have a short recess to determine if the link can be quickly reset? Thank you.
John, if you could stop the live stream, please.
Right, councillors, is there any questions to Mr Lorimer? Councillor Duff. Councillor Duff.
Yeah, thanks, Provost. I had a couple of questions for Mr Lorimer, really just for my own curiosity, really. The first one related to Table 1 on page 83, which was the capital financing requirement. Now, when we looked at the service concessions, it was said that that would increase. I just wonder what were the maths or arithmetic behind that, just out of curiosity, really.
Thanks, Councillor Duff. Yeah, it's an absolute match in terms of the maths. So the one-off benefit to and the change in our reserves arising from the service concession change that was agreed by Council as part of setting the budget a couple of weeks ago, that is exactly the sum that then increases our capital financing requirement. It's really about the accounting entries. So it boosts the change boosts our reserves, and the other side of that in terms of double entry, to be technical for a minute, is to our capital adjustment account, and that then means that we have to have a matching adjustment to our capital financing requirement.
So a kind of supplementary, while we obviously wouldn't want to do that, that would allow us to borrow money, which we at the moment are not planning to, but we could borrow money to effectively to balance our revenue situation on the basis that we're...
Sort of, I would say. Yeah, so one of the things that arises from the service concession change, we will not make any changes to the payments to PPP contractors. There's no change to the payments, there's no change to the life of those contracts. But the boost to reserves is effectively it's there, but it's not backed by cash because we're still paying out the same amount of cash to contractors. So in order to have that boost to reserves backed by cash, if we didn't otherwise have cash, surplus cash available, we'd have to come through borrowing.
Okay, thank you. Provost, which is on page 105, which is the rather complex a graph. I just kind of wonder if you could perhaps explain that a little bit. I think I half get it, but I'm not totally sure that I understand what you're basically saying. We've got a difficult situation over a number of years. Is that's what you're effectively saying in the text? But I'm not quite sure I understand all the lines and exactly what they're telling us.
Yeah, this is a new indicator, so I've been trying to get my head around it as well. Really, what it's trying to show. Go back a stage. We will have a portfolio of loans as part of our arrangement of debt. So we borrow to fund capital projects. Now we don't borrow specific amounts for specific projects. So it doesn't work like mortgages or loans. They're not the borrowing that we do isn't tied to specific assets. So we'll have a portfolio of loans, and those loans will have varying maturity periods. So some of them might be due to be repaid next year, some of them might be due to be repaid in 40 years' time. And so that's one side of the equation. The other side of the equation is that as a council, because of our capital programme, we have a certain amount of borrowing need. Now, because your borrowing need and your existing portfolio don't necessarily always match, the idea of this liability benchmark is to see where you are so that you've not got too much debt in your portfolio relative to what your longer term needs are. And it's intended to be helpful to guide, I suppose, officers and members as to where you sit relative to that benchmark. So probably the key lines on this graph are the dark blue line, which is the liability benchmark, and the light blue line, which is our existing loan debt. Now, at the moment, those things are more or less in March. They'll blip up for into 2025, assuming we take borrowing then. And then the liability benchmark will fall below the blue line. So what that's really saying is, over a period of years, unless we do other things, we'll have slightly more loans in our portfolio than what our underlying need to borrow would represent. But we'll be able, this is 10 years out, so we'll be able to manage that issue. And the gap is not a significant one, I would say. So it's really there to guide, to try and avoid, I guess, a big mismatch between your loans portfolio and your underlying need to borrow. But it's a new indicator, so we're probably all trying to get our heads around it in the finance community as well.
Okay, thanks very much. Thank you.
Councillor Shepherd had his hand up from Teams. So Councillor Shepherd, who has then now disappeared. He was.
Provost, I think we have lost Councillor Shepherd. I believe that where Councillor Shepherd is, there's a data for him joining, so it may be that he's exceeded that limit now.
Okay.
We will see if we can get him back.
Okay, thank you. Therefore, we'll move on to comments. Anyone got any comments? No, that's. Oh, sorry, my apologies. Councillor Brays.
Yes, Mr. Lorimer indicated that maybe all elected members would find Treasury management a most fascinating subject, but I actually do. But one of the things that he did say was that there's an awful lot of money there to be saved by getting this right. And of course, that money is there to spend on services that Angus Council provides. And so it's a really important aspect of what Mr. Lorimer's team do, and they seem to do it very well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brays. So therefore, it is recommended that the Council, 1, approves the proposed Treasury Management Strategy Statement and Annual Investment Strategy for 2023-24, attached as Appendix A to this report, and 2, approves the Treasury indicators in Appendix A, Annex D, Tables 2, 3 and 4. Is this agreed? Thank you very much. Moving on to Local Authority COVID-19 Economic Recovery LACER funds, and Mrs. Alison Smith is to introduce this report, and I believe Mrs. Gibbons will also be present. Over to Mrs. Smith.
Thank you. Members will be aware that we've brought forward previous reports regarding the use of the Local Authority COVID-19 Economic Recovery funding, known more easily as LACER funding. At this time, we're bringing forward an update on the current use of the monies and looking to commit for approval to commit the remaining 100,000, which was left uncommitted, subject to review of how the other funding streams were progressing. The proposal is to put that towards a round 2 of the Heatwell Angus Home Energy Support, which was oversubscribed and closed very promptly. We are also looking to extend the period of time for the targeted free bus transport, and based on current uptake via £100,000 from that scheme into the Heatwell scheme, and extend the programme, which has been slow to start but is beginning to pick up a bit of pace around take-up of that scheme. We would then bring forward a future report and obviously monitor progress on spend on all of the work streams.
Right, so questions of Councillor Durno, Councillor Gregg, Councillor Scott, and then Speed. Oh, see Councillor Cheap's hands up. Yep. Any further questions? Right, we'll start with Councillor Durno.
Thanks, Provost. I just wanted to ask Alison, the table 1 4.3, it has on it that we have the food poverty funding to support agencies, and on the second column it's got 103,717, and the allocation was at 100,000. So that means that they've went over by £3,000. Do you still need money for that allocation, or because we've put in £1 million to welfare rights, will that go towards any of that funding? I just wondered if you're going to be short of money for them now that you're going to be moving the rest of the money to the Warham heating.
Thank you. So in terms of the food poverty, apologies, came off and gone back on again. We ran that as an open bidding scheme, so groups bid into that. It was slightly oversubscribed. We were able to draw monies from elsewhere just to top that up and ensure we covered off all of the requests that were there. At this time, we're not proposing to open a new scheme for that, but it's based on the demand for the heat well scheme, which was very popular and closed quite quickly. So at this time, no, there isn't a demand to open a new scheme for the food side of things, but to invest that in terms of energy costs.
Councillor Gregg.
Thank you, Provost. When this was first brought to the council meeting on the 3rd of November last year, I expressed several concerns about the money for the bus passes, specifically around the people that live in the rural parts of Angus and how they would be able to benefit from this. Between December, when it was agreed to go ahead, and between now, the 58 passes that have been handed out, can you tell me how many of those passes were given to people that live in rural locations?
I'll ask Mrs Gibbons if she has that specific breakdown. I'm not sure if that's available at the moment, but perhaps Mrs Gibbons has more detail.
Thank you, Alison. Currently hold that detail, but we can check with our referral partners, Welfare Rights and Voluntary Action Angus to see if we can get that information for you and follow up.
Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Provost. I'm quite concerned by the figure in this report. Personally, I directed a constituent towards this through her family support worker, and the family support worker actually wasn't aware of it, and nobody else was in that social work team. The constituent then got a bus pass. They directed the family support worker to where to get one. They got a bus pass, and the bus driver on the outward journey had no idea what the bus pass was, so didn't give a bus ticket, and then the return journey was the same. So I'm wondering if that's why it's the low spend, because so many people don't know about it, and can I ask why? Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, indeed, the figures are low, and actually, as we've gone through the development of this report, they have increased. So that's heartening to see that the uptake has increased. I think that's through more referrals, increasing our number of referral partners as well is important to make sure that we bring on board as many referral partners as we can to raise awareness of the opportunities. So it was a sort of a warm start to that, I think, in terms of, but it's certainly increasing, and by increasing the number of referral partners, we hope to see that increase. That's part of the reason we're looking to extend it for a further 6 months to make sure that we can broaden that out.
Councillor Speed.
Thank you. Yeah, it was really kind of just then following on from that in terms of the fact that, you know, within the report it does say that the free travel scheme wasn't publicly promoted due to concerns over subscription. I would have thought actually it would have been really aspirational to actually be really wanting to be oversubscribed, because then we would be able to demonstrate that we are actually meeting and, you know, helping those that are struggling, but also in terms of encouraging people to use public transport. So it doesn't mention what's going to be done to promote it for this next phase during this extension, and I just wondered if you could see what is going to be done to make it more widely promoted, and also in terms of the referral pathway, can people just self-refer for a free bus pass? Is that opportunity available, or could it be?
So I can start off, and I'm sure Mrs Gibbons would like to come in and add to that. So yeah, I think that is part of it. We need to do more around that promotion and develop a bit of a communications plan around that. It's making sure that all of our referral partners are really aware of the detail, and that's being cascaded as far and wide as we can to increase that uptake. And by bringing different and new, so for example, through the employability teams, for example, who are out working with people, making sure that everybody is aware of that. I'll ask Mrs Gibbons if she wants to add in terms of the specifics of the self-referral point.
Thank you, Alison. Yes, so the ethos of the cautious approach to the pilot scheme was to ensure that the bus passes were not oversubscribed and staff resources, which were limited, were not oversubscribed. And we were really looking to protect the service for the most vulnerable. So we chose to issue the passes through existing referral routes. So, for example, contact to welfare rights for benefits assessments and through voluntary action Angus. What we have proposed to do for round 2 for the extension is to introduce 2 new referral partners. So that would be our communities officers in the Vibrant Communities teams who are out working with our communities, and also via SCARF, which is another part of this report. So there would be 2 new routes into referrals. We're also considering discussing further with our social work teams who were previously made aware of the scheme and of who to refer it into, but we will make sure that that is re-communicated with them.
Councillor Cheek.
Thanks, Provost. Just question here really is bearing in mind the low uptake on the free bus transport, looking at the figures and end of February on the town centres support for local economic recovery, and reading through the report, it looks a relatively low uptake on that, lower than we expected. So that in part, and also if we even look down on the child poverty figure, and there's another reason for that, again, out of 150, only 9,300 has been actioned up to the end of February. So what I'm saying here is if there's a lower uptake on either of these allocations of funds, are these going to come back again together on another paper to see how we could really allocate them?
Yes, absolutely. So we're monitoring throughout all of these strands, uptake and progress. For example, with the business side of things, the scheme is set up that there was a level of engagement done, working with businesses to identify need. Thereafter, there's the opportunity for small grants. So the small grants side of things hasn't kicked in yet. So that will obviously increase the uptake and spend on. But through the monitoring that I have of the overall scheme, we're looking to see if there's any slowing down or demand elsewhere, and we would bring forward further reports with any proposed changes.
Provost, I had a second question, actually. The question is more general, again, from Mrs Smith here, is that bearing in mind that this is...
Councillor Cheap, yes, I will allow you a second question at this occasion, but you need to put your...
Bearing in mind this fund is COVID-19 economic recovery funding, and seeing how the money has been allocated, has there been any other projects or brought forward that this money could be used for, rather than, although obviously the importance of against child poverty and food poverty is important, but is there anything else that has been considered as an option other than just using the 100,000 to be automatically put into that target?
So in terms of all of the funding that's been coming through, we've been looking at, there's also been a range of different funds and how they've been allocated against different needs. Certainly the proposals in here go back to the original agreement in terms of how we would use that money, which was on that thematic split. Where we're seeing that demand is certainly around that energy increase and noting the changes to energy fuel allowances and what's coming through. So that was deemed to be where we're seeing greatest areas of demand and request. So that seems appropriate and within the current criteria of this fund. Obviously, as other funds come forward, we can look to match them into other demands that we see. But this fits within what we're seeing from inquiries that are coming through, etc. I don't know if Victoria wants to add anything to that further.
Thank you, Alison. No, nothing further to add, just that this is in line with the later governance and guidance.
Thank you for that. Councillor Wan.
Thank you, Provost. Councillor Cheap at the end, so and the answer came out. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Doran.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Cheap asked that my question is the first one he asked as well. But I did want to follow on from that. Given that the spend on the targeted free bus transport is so low in that period that it's been running, and I think this is potentially a missed opportunity because that period was obviously the one running up to Christmas. Could it be the scope of it or the guidance be widened further to encourage more people to travel by public transport and so that more people can take up this offer, particularly around some key areas around maybe as we're coming up to holiday times and things like that, where people and families might need to use transport, and to encourage people to visit towns and sites in Angus as well. So just a consideration given that the spend on it has been so low so far.
Certainly within the criteria, there's scope to look at, how we could perhaps stretch that further. Obviously, as the name suggests, it is about that economic recovery, and particularly, we're keen to see where that can support people to, whether that is to access training, learning, employment, etc. And for interviews, we've seen examples of that, or to support people with that cost of living. But I think some of the ideas you've outlined there, we could certainly look into the scope as long as it fitted within that general criteria. I'm sure there's other thoughts that have come forward as to how it could be used, and we're certainly happy to have a look at that.
Is that a supplementary question? Sorry,
You whips it away from
my
me
apologies. If I give one to Councillor Cheap, I can give a question
I can kind of combine it with a comment, if that's okay.
So you'll keep it as a comment?
Well, I can keep it as a comment, yeah.
Oh, okay.
I wasn't sure
Councillor Clark, sorry.
And I'm probably getting this completely out of order, Provost, but I'm going to go for it anyway. I've made it known that I am supporting a family who are enjoying this. So I want that on record that this is working for them. And they're very vulnerable. So I'm delighted with this. But there's just something that's just listening to my colleagues there and thinking in terms of advertising, because it's word of mouth, whatever. And we've got partners that we're speaking about. The biggest partner really in this, the biggest entity in it that we need is the bus company itself. Now, we mentioned the bus driver earlier. Councillor Scott mentioned that. And I have to back her up because one of the times there was no animosity, but it was just a bit of curiosity when the first time this Pakistani family produced this. The bus driver was a wee bit bemused. So he was brilliant with him. There is nothing to be said about that. But I'm just thinking in terms, they're the people that we really need to make sure, no, we can do what we like with partners and all the rest of it, and that's brilliant. But if we're not going to get the bus drivers to understand what it's like, what's going on here, that is a problem. So I would just like that to be considered. Thank you.
So that's more. So that's starting on comments rather than any specific questions.
Well, I suppose maybe I'll ask a question then. Did we make sure that was happening? There we go.
I think certainly by, some of the, the comments we're hearing, some of the feedback, we know that there's more can be done. It may be the kind of thing when we set these things up with a partner that is sitting at that higher level, it's making sure that's cascaded through the organisation, to say right down to the drivers, so we can do more to make sure that that's picked up for the next 6 months.
Thanks very much, Lance.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. And therefore we'll go for comments, and I'll let Councillor Speed start first, but I'll take the other names down just now. So that was Councillor Whiteside, Councillor Melville, Councillor Gregg, Councillor Cheap. Nobody on the teams so far. Right, we'll start so far with Councillor Speed.
Yeah, thank you. So just as a comeback to the answers that were given, and just on the back of what Deputy Provost was saying there, when I read through this report, especially on the free travel, it highlights that this is the first of its kind in Scotland. However, it feels like, but we're not going to tell people about it. And we've gone from £150,000 being set aside for this fund and only £50 being spent. So, I really do hope that it is much more widely promoted. I think we should be shouting from the rooftops. It talks about, opening the referral pathway up, which I welcome. But alongside that, it says to reach out to hard to reach people. I think we need to stop saying that. I think, and what we're in danger of is being a hard to reach council. I think those that really need us, those that are struggling, we need to be removing those barriers, not keeping something secret and pretend you can find out about it so that we're not overprescribed. So I really do hope that for this next part we can widely promote it. And I think it would be better to be faced by the headache of being overprescribed and knowing that we're doing something right and making a difference, than to be in a situation where we've come up with this scheme and only £50 of it's been spent and not enough people know about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Speed.
Thank you, Provost, and I'd just like to thank all the staff that have been involved in all of the LACER projects. I think it's been an excellent use of the funds so far. A lot's been made of the fact that we've only spent £50 at the time of writing this report on the bus scheme, but this was a brand new initiative, and pilot projects do take a while to bed in. But I know that each and every family that have received really grateful for it. And it's also worth noting that the scheme has attracted interest from organisations such as the Poverty Alliance and the Social Guarantee Needs Must scheme, who are keen to share it with people around the country. I think the Poverty Alliance spoke to Mr Leith about it, and we're writing an article on it. So commendations to everyone involved, and I think it is picking up pace, and we'll see it expanding as time goes on. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Melville.
Thank you, Provost. This is symbolic, I think, of the administration's willingness to, but also to be agile in advancing the interests of the people that we serve. The first round of the Heatwell scheme did provide lifeline support to so many people across the county grappling with the skyrocketing cost of energy. As the report makes clear, that's nearly 1,600 households and over 1,400 children. That's an example of what we can do together with the powers we have and the values that we share. So I will now turn to the substance of the report. I think in light of the information that we did gather during the pilot, it is right to reprioritise some of that funding. It could be of critical support for struggling families. The proposal to start a new round of the Heatwell scheme backed by £216,000 will benefit 814 Angus households. More money to support people with energy bills means fewer families freezing at home and fewer children going to bed hungry. As I drove to this meeting today, I passed people on Monifieth High Street waiting in the pouring rain to take up the offer of free food. The cost of living crisis that we're facing is affecting every generation and every community, and we've got a duty as a council to do everything that we can. We won't solve it today, we won't solve it in the next 100 or 1,000 days, but we can, as we did before, use the powers we have and the values we share to make things just a little bit easier for some of the poorest households and I encourage every member of the council to support us in doing that. Thank you.
Councillor Melville. Councillor Gregg.
Thank you, Provost. Back in November the 3rd last year, when this was first brought, I think we all expressed, well, certainly in the non-administration side, some great concerns about this bus pass money that was going to be used and how we thought it could have been used for other things and better placed. It's good, though, that the trial has gone ahead, and I think there are lessons to be learned there. Perhaps it should be advertised more. Perhaps we could do this. Perhaps we could do that. So hopefully those lessons will be learned for the ongoing part of this trial, and then when we get to the end of that trial we can look back and see how that has worked. I would still be concerned about the people that live in the rural parts of Angus. They don't have a particularly great bus service, and so these bus passes aren't going to be really any of use to those. And I would quote from Councillor Bill Duff in the DMRC meeting on Tuesday, where he said, "In rural Angus, our public transport is extremely poor." Using the money to go back into the Heatwell Angus Home Energy Support Programme is fantastic, because it will then help people that live in the rural areas, the people that aren't on mains gas, the people that are having to use oil, gas, central heating, tanked and otherwise, or just electricity. It's well known that public transport in Angus is a sore point with many. Again, I would quote from the DMRC meeting on Tuesday, where Councillor Beattie said, "We are not served well by public transport in Angus." And I would also wonder why, when on the 3rd of November at the meeting, Councillor Melville was quite proud to display his under-22 bus pass and the using of the bus. However, in this meeting today...
Councillor Gregg, is this relevant to the report?
It is, yes. It's with regard to the bus passes. So as I said, Councillor Melville, who was proud to display his under-22 bus pass and welcomed this part, has then just said today that he drove to the meeting. So I would ask why he didn't use his bus pass. And again, for people in the rural areas, is this money and these bus passes, are they really going to help those? And if not, which I don't think they will, whereas I think the Heatwell Fund would be better served to the people of the council.
I just make a point of clarity.
Yeah. Clarity.
Thank you very much. Very happy to answer, Councillor Gregg. I turned 22 on the 7th of January this year. I appreciate that you didn't send me a birthday card, though. Thanks.
Had I known, I would have.
Councillor Cheap.
Thank you, Provost. Getting back to reality. As I said in my question, going back to the very start of all of this, this was economic recovery funding. And while I appreciate the importance of all the other aspects of this, we are talking now about £1.6 million. And of that 1.6 million, now 1.2 million is allocated to child poverty, to fuel poverty, food poverty, quite rightly. But as I brought up the point at the moment that the amount of actual spend on town centre, economic growth is what we're all talking about, economic recovery here, I would like to suggest that that 400,000, whatever happens, remains in town centre funding, because our town centres are crying out for assistance. And for them, it's all about and economic recovery. It's as important for economic recovery to sustain our businesses in our towns. So if the take-up on what we've directed our support for local economic recovery is not being taken up adequately, and we look at the figures in page 108 onwards on that, then we should redirect that funding to town centre support in some other way and talk to the businesses to what they may see that being, or let's all get our heads together and think what that could be to help. Because a lot of successful businesses out there are the ones who are trying to engage anyway, and they're the ones that are going to take us forward. So rather than that money being redistributed anywhere else, I would ask that 400,000 is retained for town centre funding, because I can think of lots of places where that money could be spent to boost town centres. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cheap. I saw Councillor Meeshan's hands up. Do you want to make comment? And I have seen yourself, Councillor Doran, as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Provost. It's just to say that I welcome the report. I do that the bus pass hasn't been ideal, but if we're now going to look at a push on advertising that, then I think that's actually the way forward. I would also like to say that the cost of living roadshows, I believe, were a huge success. And in particular, in my own constituency, Kirriemuir, the public attendance was estimated 180, which was the second highest of all the towns. So, I mean, I would really say that I attended quite a few of them, that these were actually a very worthy cause and were very successful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dorn.
Thank you. I just to add a comment that although it's really great that the council has been able to help so many people, I think the numbers of people that have needed support from these the schemes offered, it's actually really sad that we're in this situation where households do need so much support because of the cost of living at the minute. And I just wanted to add a comment relating to the bus transport and building on actually what has just been said, that the cost of living roadshows were well attended, they were received really well, and that perhaps those bus passes could be taking along to events like that in the future. I think what needs to happen is that as many barriers that exist to accessing those bus passes are removed to make it as easy as possible for people to access that support. So as well as raising the profile of it, so people are aware of it, making it easy as possible for those to get those bus passes and use them.
Thank you, Councillor Dorn. Any Councillor Duff?
Yeah, thanks, Provost. I just would make a comment really about Councillor Gregg's comments. I would say he was referencing things that were said at DMRC. Now, that is a quasi-judicial committee, and I'm not sure that bringing comments into this chamber are particularly helpful. I certainly wouldn't respond on that basis, so it isn't normal, I think. I would just make that comment.
Yep.
Could you just clarify that your statement about the poor bus service in rural Angus and Angus generally wouldn't have an impact on giving out free bus passes to people that are subject to a poor bus service?
I'm not responding to any comments that have been said at that committee. I think it's a quasi-judicial committee, and I don't think bringing items that were discussed in it into this meeting is helpful or even advisable.
And that's why I did stand up, or didn't stand, but interrupted you to say, is it relevant to the... So, with that in mind, and because there's been actually a good debate about this, I was actually just going to say that you've got all your, you see everything in front of the recommendations in front of you, but I'm going to go through it one by one, because lots of the questions and comments are there actually in this. So we'll go one by one. It's recommended that the Council, 1, note the brief update on progress with previously approved projects using laser funding set out in Appendix 1. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
2, approve the proposed use of the remaining uncommitted laser funding of 100,000 and 16,000 of unspent monies from round 1 of the Heatwell Angus Home Energy Support Programme to create and fund round 2 of the scheme as set out in Table 2, Proposal 1 of this report. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Approved the virement of 100,000 from the current underspend of the allocation of the targeted bus transport scheme to increase the proposed budget for the Heatwell Angus Home Energy Support Programme to create and fund round 2 of the scheme as set out in Proposal 2 in Table 2. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Approve the continuation of the pilot for a further 3 months during the period March to August 2023, reducing the budget by 100,000 and utilising the remaining 49,000 remaining fund. Is that agreed? No? Agreed. Sorry, 6 months. My apologies. A further 6 months. Freudian slip there. But is that agreed?
Agreed.
And number 4, note that a future to members in September 2023 to provide a further update on progress with these schemes. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. Moving on to number 7, the 2023 UCI Cycling World Championships, and to introduce this report.
Thank you, Provost. The report advises on proposals for the Gran Fondo time trial event to be held in Angus on Monday, 7th of August 2023 as part of the 2023 UCI Cycling World Championships, which is an 11-day international event taking place across Scotland. Members are asked to agree to host an event in Angus and the provisional route along the A92 dual carriageway between Arbroath and Dundee. As highlighted in the report, it is hoped that this event will bring significant economic benefit to the area, and that careful consideration has been given regarding the route and the organisation of the event. Provost, I do just need to highlight a requirement to amend an aspect of the recommendation. In summary, it is that the Director of Legal and Democratic Services will sign the delivery rather than myself, the Director of Infrastructure and Environment. But just for the point of clarity, I'll just to be exact, its recommendation 2 remains that the Council agrees to the provisional route and authorises the Director of Infrastructure and Environment to agree the final route, but that the Council authorises the Director of Legal and Democratic Services to execute the delivery agreement and that necessary documentation in respect of the project.
Thank you very much. Has anyone got any questions? Councillor Wan, Councillor Bell.
Thank you very much. Whilst I welcome the report and the fact that the UCI Cycling World Championships wants to come to at least in part to Angus and using our dual carriageway coming to Arbroath, can I just really ask what economic benefit you think this is going to bring to Angus on the basis that it's just cycling in, turning at the roundabout and going back to Dundee? Will there be hordes of fans at the side of the motorway watching this? Will there be anybody at the roundabout watching it? Will they actually go into Arbroath? I just can't see where the economic benefits are. I am in agreement with the proposal. I just can't see what economic benefits are coming to Angus for us.
I think the economic benefits are, for example, that there are an estimated 600 participants in the event, but they'll also have their support crews, whether that's family and friends, that will come, and they will be coming from around the world, and they will be staying in this area. And the feedback I've had from the organisers is that typically they will stay for a period of time and therefore will spend their time and their money in the area when they are here. The cycling is a very popular and well followed activity. Again, I'm advised that there will be people who will come to view the event, spend time in the area. And I think just on bigger picture, I think this highlights the hopefully the ability for Angus to hold such events and what we can offer, and that we could hopefully host similar events in the future that will deliver more economic benefits associated with such events.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Daly.
Thank you. I'm really pleased to see this type of event come to Angus, and I'm really pleased that there has been a resolution to the route that's planned. I was keen too to see what sort of metrics will be used to measure the success of the event, not simply in economic terms, although that's really important, but in terms of people engaging with the sport, maybe uptake in cycling as an activity for leisure as well as for active travel, and whether that might be possible to pull out through engaging with partners, for example, Angus Cycle Hub, and that kind of partner who would have a vested interest in the success of the race. So thanks for that. It'd be really good to hear what you were thinking around those metrics. Thanks.
I think that's a very good point. I think it's something that I'll take on board when the future discussion organisation event, that we don't lose track of that, and see how we can measure the benefits that you've described there. I think that there are means to do that, and having spoken with the organiser already, I think they are keen to try and quantify the benefits that you've described. And as I said, I take on board your point, and I think in future discussions we'll do my best to make sure that happens.
Thanks, Provost. Graham, the actual route, is it going into the into the town centre, or is it going up the Westway?
Just to clarify, it will not be entering at all. It will start on the A92 to the west of the Palmuir Field village roundabout, and it will stay on the dual carriageway A92 heading westward on the westbound carriageway. It will not go as far as the roundabout where the Arbroath Golf Club is. It will stop. When I say stop, the riders will turn round, and they're only halfway there, and they've got to cycle all the way back. But I'm sure for them that's no problem. For myself, maybe more of a challenge.
I'll just say that it's good that you're having it, in the Arbroath holiday period, so people coming back from Arbroath holidays then, so it won't be too busy. People won't be rushing back to work on Monday, so it might be.
Councillor Cheek.
Yeah, I just actually disagree with Councillor Durham with that one, because my question really was that who on earth agreed to be on a Monday and closing half the A92. Going as I do, gotten back and forth to Dundee, it's a very busy dual carriageway, particularly first thing in the morning. We're closing it from 7 in the morning till 5 p.m. on one side of the carriageway. So we're going to have, I suppose, two-way traffic on the other carriageway, or is it going to be direction another way for other people? I saw the other map. So that's all I was saying. If going into Dundee, will be fine if the dual carriageway going westward is clear. But I just wondered why it's a strange day. Why not do it at the weekend?
School holidays as well.
Yeah, but school holidays aren't that big a deal. People still work. Thanks.
Yeah, I think a couple of points I need to clarify. I think firstly, the eastbound carriageway will stay open for dual carriageway, both lanes, and it won't be a contraflow that's in place. So what will happen is that if you're travelling from Arbroath or Carnoustie to Dundee, for example, you will take a diversion route. So, for example, Carnoustie, the obvious diversion route would be along Barry Road into Moneyfeith and then into Dundee. There are already established diversion routes in the event that the A92 westbound carriageway is closed for whatever reason, and we would we're working with the organiser to put that in place on the day. In terms of the selection of the day, personally I think there's pros and cons for whichever day. We've tried our best to work with the organiser. We were keen that it was during the school period. We thought that would be a positive, and yes, there's certainly an impact from this event being held, but on balance we feel it's a good thing for this area.
Thank you, Provost. A bit like many others, I'm really pleased to see this come. set Angus up on an international stage, and those that do come to visit, hopefully we'll be encouraging them to come back and visit us again for their holidays. And with that in mind, bearing in mind that they aren't coming fully into Arbroath and only partially into Angus, what work are we as a council going to do to encourage people further into Angus to come and visit our parks, our seasides, our destination parks, our lochs, our museums, and all the other great attractions that we have here in Angus, to try and encourage them further in and spend money, not just close to that particular area, but throughout Angus as a whole?
Again, a good point, Councillor Gregg, and it's something that we're already trying to action. Colleagues from our economic development team are part of the group that are working with the organiser to try and maximise the benefit as you have described. In terms of the marketing literature that goes out there, there's subs that have been set up regarding communications for the event, and we recognise the importance with what you've just said, and we as a team of officers that are working on the event will do our best to maximise that benefit.
Councillor Speed.
Thanks, Provost. Yeah, I warmly welcome this report. I think it's something that's really exciting for Angus, and I think it's something that we need to embrace and welcome. It takes me a little bit back to my Luthier of Angus days, where I cycled around Angus with a toilet strapped on my back to raise awareness, and had hundreds of people join me for the finish line. So on that, I just wondered what will be done, kind of a little bit like what Councillor Gregg was saying there, but I know within 1,600 approximate able-bodied and para athletes from around the world will be coming. So just on that, what will be done, especially for those where they might have access requirements? What will be done to kind of promote our accessible, whether it be toilets or whether it just be areas of whether it be interest or basic needs for those that might be travelling and staying within Angus? Yeah,
I think Councillor Speed is similar to Councillor Gregg's point. I take on board the need. Well, first of all, they need to maximise the benefit, but also the point around accessibility, and that we need to make sure we consider. All I could say is that I fully recognise the point you make, and myself and the team officers that are working on the event, I will try my very best to make sure that that is taken into account, along with the other facets that we need to consider, hosting such a large-scale event. But yeah, just to give you some assurance that your point's taken on board and will be part of our considerations.
To come back, yeah, I think, particularly in terms of kind of accessible accommodation, where people might have particular needs, or accessible eating places, car parking spaces, toilets. But I think that really needs to be bagged up, especially if we are going to have large numbers of para athletes joining us, which, like I say, I can't welcome enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Speed. Councillor Doran.
Thank you. My question kind of follows on from the previous two. So I'd be really keen, obviously, to hope that everyone sees this as something that is really positive, and that people are encouraged to go out and watch and take a look at what's going on. And so in doing that, I'd really be keen to see routes that people can go and see and watch the race take place safely, but also that they're able to access those without needing to use a car unless that's absolutely necessary. So from the towns and spaces along the route, if there's viewing areas that can be accessed, so encourage people to go on their bike to view it, or walk to view it rather than take a car. So I just wanted to ask for that. It sounds like the plans are still ongoing, but I wanted to raise that as well.
Yes, regarding viewing points and accessibility, that's something that we recognise we'll need to give consideration to, along with many other things. I think you've already got a flavour. When hosting such a large-scale event, it comes with a lot of challenges. But one of the advantages of actually the route that where we are hosting it is that it's next to the NCR1, which is National Cycling Route 1, which goes from Dundee to Arbroath, and it's an excellent cycling route, very, very popular. So my observation would be that there's actually an opportunity here from people from further afield to cycle, and there's, as you know, there's a lot of keen cyclists who are willing to cycle very long distances in a day, and we have the NCR1 that goes along the route. So I would be hopeful that you will have many, many cyclists that come, you know, especially it's a good time of year, will come to Angus along using the NCR1, and it's a short hop to then find the viewing point, and we'll consider how we manage the spectators too. But in many ways, my observation is that there's a lot of advantages with this route, and that's definitely one of them.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Point of order. Point of order.
Sorry, Councillor.
You're doing Provost.
Sorry, that's because I didn't switch the mic on. Thank you very much for that, Councillor MacDonald. We have Councillor Brays, we have Provost. Anyone else for comments? And Councillor MacDonald. Right, Councillor Brays.
Sorry, Provost. I think it would be more appropriate for the convener of Communities Committee to speak first rather than myself, since he's got his hand up now, if that's all right with you.
That is perfectly okay, since I had didn't have my mic on in the first place. So Councillor Mark MacDonald first.
Thank you, Provost. I was going to sum up, but yeah, no, I think this is really good. I welcome it. There's been a lot of work I saw with the report and how the previous route was articulated to us from the organisers, the engagement with members of the ward who all pitched in really well, worked together to sort of make a clear path as to what we needed to do with officers to make this happen. So I think Graham and the team have done a phenomenal job to get to that sort of point. Much of the positive comments in the questions, I would just like to reiterate, I think this is a great opportunity to put Angus on the map. I think it's a great thing to have cycling come to an area where cycling is absolutely brilliant and excellent. And I know that Walter Scott, who we're looking forward to hopefully seeing back soon, was very interested in this project at the very start of its inception. So there's a lot of good things to come from this. And I just want to say that, yeah, I wholeheartedly welcome it and look forward to seeing all of these cyclists come on board and seeing the fantastic television camera views of Angus as they hurtle down the dual carriageway with the golf course at Carnoustie and all the things that Montefieth has to offer. It's going to be brilliant. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. I will take Deputy Provost next. Councillor Brace, that's why I was looking. It was a question.
Yes, thanks, Provost. And I would echo all that Councillor MacDonald has said. That the televisuals of this event will be absolutely splendid, with great panoramic views out over the sea and all sorts of things. I think it will be a draw for tourists. This is a good collaboration between the City Council and also, of course, P&K are hosting some of it on Friday. So all good. And of course, there's no direct financial cost to Angus Council. There will be a bit of officer time, as it says. And I would really like to thank and congratulate our officers on all that they've done so far. And I really welcome this. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Brace. Deputy Provost.
Congratulations. Your quiet enthusiasm is actually infectious. Interestingly, when I hear you mention NCR, for an old Dundonian, that's the National Cash Register. So you just threw me back there. But if I go to page 111, 3.5 there, and it tells us there in the bullet point, Angus would become part of the overall World Champions marketing campaign, and I'll no say the rest. You can all see it. as somebody that enjoys cycling, wouldn't call themselves a cyclist. I sit on a bike, but it's taken me some years to get there. I think young people, and NASA young people, are enthused when they see something like this. I would say things like the World Cup, Wimbledon, etc., enthuses youngsters, boys and girls that go out there who wouldn't normally get the chance. They see it on TV, and they see it as something that they can achieve. So that might sound like a million miles away from here, but I didn't see it as that. I see, we've been speaking earlier about people whose opportunities are narrowed in life through poverty. This is something that, and I'm not being twee here, I think it's very, very important for Angus. And for the outskirts of Arbroath, I think people will go into Arbroath, will stay, they'll have their entourage with them, they'll find some place to stay. They'll even go for fish and chips. So I think this is tremendously good. Well done.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. Any last for comments? Okay, so you have the report in front of you. Are we agreeing 1, agreeing 2 and authorising 3? Is that agreed? Thank you very much. The timetable of council meetings, August 23 to June 2024. And Jackie Buchanan will introduce this report.
Thank you, Provost. This has got a straightforward report. It's just in terms of, as the Provost says, the period of meetings from August through to June next year, and it's recommended that the Council approve the timetable as attached to the report. I would just add that members should note that the Governance MOG, the Members Officer Working Group, will be reviewing the timetable of meetings and the terms of reference of Council or committees as part of their remit. Any update on that will be provided to Council, of course. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions? Comments? Is this agreed? Thank you.
If you could stop the live stream, please.